Hello and welcome to this week's episode of John's Garage. This week we're having a look at this Mark 1 Porsche Boxster, and it is gorgeous. It's had a couple of little improvements along the way. I'll tell you about what those are that kind of make it look like a Mark 2, but it's actually a Mark 1. We'll have a little look at it and we'll have a little drive of it and we'll see how we go. So listen, I'm looking forward to this one. It's our second Porsche in a week, so let's get going on it. Okay folks, before I jump into this week's video, please make sure you are subscribing to the channel. Please make sure to share the videos. It really means a huge amount to me to see those numbers rising up. It lets me know that you're enjoying the content, you're enjoying the channel, and that you want more of it. So please make sure you subscribe, like, and share all the videos. But anyway, enough about all of that stuff. Let's have a chat about this Porsche. So I said in my introduction that it had been loved on by the owner a little bit, a few changes, and one of the first ones you're going to notice is the headlamps. These are from a slightly later car, a facelift car. Originally this would have had the egg coloured ones, and what I mean by egg is these lenses here, the indicator lens would be orange, side marker over there on that side as well would be orange, and when we go around the back you'll see the rear end of the car has the more modern lamps fitted, or lights fitted I should say. Now, what is a Porsche Boxster, okay? Well, it's kind of half a 911 if I put it that way. From the back seats forward, it is a 911, okay? It is also got the interior of a 911, but from here backwards, it's totally new. And we'll talk a little bit about why we say it's totally new and all that. So, as I said, this is one of the earlier Porsche Boxsters that was available. That means it has a mid-mounted 2.5 litre, 6-cylinder boxer engine. And what I mean by boxer is instead of the cylinders going up and down, or the pistons going up and down in the cylinders, they go side to side. This means you can have a much more compact engine and you can have a lower center of gravity. Now, at the time that this car came out, that engine was producing about 204 horsepower and it was good for 0 to 60 in about 6.9 seconds, okay? So it had reasonably good performance, wasn't that far off the last of the air-cooled Porsche 911, the 993, which we drove last week in terms of performance. Handling, different kettle of fish, okay? That mid-mounted engine gave it a much better weight distribution, 50-50% weight distribution front to rear. It also gave it a lower center of gravity, and all of that meant much more secure handling from the rear-wheel drive platform. Now, at the time of this car's launch, however, it wasn't universally welcomed, and the reason for that was the handling was considered, while incredibly sweet, too safe. It was too well handling. In other words, it wasn't like the Porsche 911, which could kill you at any moment, especially in the wet going around a turn. This would keep you alive. This would make it to the other side. This wouldn't normally drive backwards through a ditch, okay? The other thing is the performance, while it's very good and sounds great and does perform quite well, people also said, it's good, but it could be better. The chassis they felt was better and more capable than what Porsche were giving it. Now, you have to understand, this was the baby Porsche of the range, okay? The poor man's 911, as they called it in the day. But I actually hate that phrase. And the reason I hate that phrase is it's kind of insulting. This was a brilliant car in its own right when it came out. It's still a brilliant car today in its own right, okay? Now, the other thing is, people, as I said this car could handle better, could do with more power, mainly because, as I say, it's more than half a Porsche 911, okay? Which meant it could handle more, and it did. Porsche, in its second revision, expanded the engine in the year 2000 to 2.7 litres, up to 250 horsepower, and also launched the Carrera S version of this, which came with a 3.2 litre engine, offering many horsepowers, okay? So handling was available and could be matched. And of course, later generations have built on all of that as well. But let's have a little talk about the history of this car. So let's go around the back and we'll talk about the history. Now, before we get into the history, of course, you can see those lights I was talking about a few minutes ago. These are the facelift lights, not the original lights that would have came with this, which would have had orange indicator lenses and wouldn't have been quite as crystal clear. Now, the owner does tell me that they have all of the original parts and they can just be bolted back on. The other thing you'll notice is the rear windscreen here is glass. That also came from a later car, and the reason for this being fitted is because when the owner purchased this car, unfortunately the roof had weathered and torn, wasn't keeping the elements out, so they've replaced that, okay? So, just to address a couple of the things before anyone goes, oh my god, that's not what it looks like. Anyway, it is what it looks like. So, let's have a little talk about the history of this car. I mentioned in last week's video when we were talking about the Porsche 993, 911, okay, it's all these nines, it's hard to keep up with them, that Toyota almost bought Porsche. Now, Toyota had a significant input into development of Porsche and the success of Porsche from this car forward, okay? But we have to go back in time to talk about this. Around 1991, Porsche were at the Tokyo Motor Show. They realized that the range of cars they had a problem, and that problem was they shared nothing. Engines, transmissions, body panels, interior, switches, electrics, nothing. They didn't share anything. They kind of realized they were in financial trouble at that time, that they couldn't continue that way. They had to create a car or a platform which could be shared across multiple cars, interiors which could be shared and which could be, I suppose, distinguished within the model range, okay? And this was the first product of that. So it wasn't Porsche's first water-cooled engine, but it was its first mid-mounted water-cooled engine, okay? And it preceded then the water cooling of the 911 with its rear mounted engine platform, okay? Now, it must also be said that this was the first mid-engine Porsche since 914 of the 1970s, okay? Anyway, I'm getting mixed up here in all the different histories. So let's talk the history, okay? I said Toyota had a significant input into this car. What was that input? It was showing Porsche and supporting Porsche around 1993 when they released the Boxster concept, okay, which looked pretty much exactly like this. When they released that, about how do we share parts? How do we make the most out of the platforms we have? How do we make the most out of the engines we have and share them across models to rationalize and to cut down on cost and of course to achieve synergies which would save Porsche money going forward. So as I said, from approximately here forward, this is a Porsche 911. Interior, exterior, that's what it is. From here back, this is a Porsche Boxster and will remain so, okay? This was Porsche's highest selling car until the 2003 Porsche Cayenne came along, and that became the volume seller then. Of course, that was the SUV Porsche, all right? The engine is mid-mounted. Unfortunately, the only way I could show you the engine is to jack this up onto a panel. I can't show it to you from this side. It's too many covers and it's not my car, so I'm not going to remove them and try and upset things, okay? Now, the car entered production around mid-1996, was launched later that year. Now, in right-hand drive, it was launched in 1997. It continued in this particular body style, in this particular format until 2000, whereupon it received these different facelift items, which I've already pointed out and discussed, which have been fitted to this car. And then in 2004, the second generation was launched. In 2000, there was also a couple of power upgrades around the engine, which I've already discussed, to make as much use out of the chassis as possible, okay? Now, as I said, performance wasn't considered huge with this car, but what was considered huge with this car was the handling. The other thing which wasn't considered huge with this car was the affordability of it. It was quite affordable for a Porsche, okay? Now, for someone who wanted something a little bit more powerful than a Mazda MX-5, this is where you went. For somebody who wanted something a little bit more, I suppose, with a more brand cash, this is where you went, okay? This is what you went with. Now, around this time in the mid-90s in Europe, there was a huge amount of product launches, and it was pretty much a high point for sports cars. So what had you that competed with this? Well, in 1995, BMW launched the Z3. Sorry, 1996. In 1997, Mercedes launched the SLK, and this also arrived then around that time. Those two cars just preceded this particular one in right-hand drive markets. And of course, we can see then things went on from there and developed from there. And now we all drive SUVs, which that doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, this was the high point of sports cars is what I'm trying to say. Porsche with this particular one focused on handling, okay? They also focused on usability. So the handling was safe. The interior was nice and comfortable, wider, had much better supportive seats. And you also had two trunks, okay? Did I say trunks? I'm watching too much YouTube, okay? I was watching YouTube last night, other car people on YouTube, obviously American. This car has two boots. You have a boot in the back, and you have a boot in the front. The problem, though, with storage is the interior, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes when we're having a little look in there. So anyway, let's get into that interior and have a look at it. So folks, you're very welcome to the interior of the Porsche Boxster. Now, one of the lovely things about this interior, and I hope to catch a shot of it, is this floating panel on top of the dashboard. Really, really cool, has actually dated really well. The other thing I'm glad to say is dated really well is the dials. They're lovely and clear. Odd thing though here is that the dials go up in 25 mile per hour increments. So you have 25, 50, 75, 100, 125 and 150. That is miles, not kilometers. There is no kilometers on it, but despite the fact that that's odd, you do have an LCD or digital layout for the miles per hour here, which appears in the center of the clock as well, in the center of the rev counter, which of course in Porsche tradition is fitted in the middle. Now, roof, All you do is you press this, pull it back, and the roof drops away electronically. That takes about 12 to 15 seconds. I've actually gotten 2 figures on it, so I'm not sure which is the right one. The other thing which we have here is lovely, lovely clear dials. A little bit cheap feeling. I'm not going to lie, they do feel a little bit cheap, but they have stood the test of time. They are well put together. And as I say, this is the same dashboard you would find in a Porsche 911. Now, one of the things which isn't original in here is this Pioneer head unit for the stereo. The original Porsche item which would have been fitted to this car, well, it wasn't universally loved, we'll put it like that. Sound was considered poor, number one. The other thing which was wrong with it was the buttons were really fiddly. They were small. It was difficult to use. There's the button for the roof, by the way. Central locking here. Loads of blanks here to make you feel like you didn't buy a Porsche 911, but hey, that's life, okay? The other thing which doesn't feel great, I'm not going to lie, is this gear knob. Now, while the shape of it is nice, the feel of it isn't. It does feel a bit cheap. Next up, I did say there was a practicality issue with the interior. So first up, the seats. They're really comfortable, okay? I'm not going to lie. They're a fine balance between sportiness and comfort. We'll put it that way, okay? You've plenty of elbow room here for both driver and passenger, so that's not the issue. You have tiny little door bins, okay? And that leads me to the problem. All you have is the tiny little door bins. You have a couple of little storage units here, but you have no glove box. Instead, you got a side airbag, and that's it. The other thing which is fitted to this car is airbags in the door. So you have side airbags, you have passenger airbag and a driver's airbag. Now you can see the driver's steering wheel showing a little bit of age. I do believe they have a new original one to go into it, or better condition original one to go into it, which would be nice. Now the other thing is the switchgear. That does feel a bit cheap and does feel a little bit like it came from China's best plastics factory that was having a bad day, okay? They don't feel great, all right? I'm not going to lie on that. But other than that, the plastics do feel nice. There's a logical and clear layout to everything. I've plenty of headroom here. I imagine a taller driver would have no problem getting comfortable here. And also there is a nice windbreaker there and nice mesh behind the seats. Other than that, you have your obligatory ashtray, which nowadays always contains coins. You have your cigarette lighter there, and that's pretty much it. It's nice and bright. I think the view out of it's pretty good. The wing mirrors are nice size. There is a bit of a blind spot that appears here, but to be honest, do you care looking behind you? I don't think there's any convertible really that doesn't have a blind spot where the roof is, given the nature of soft tops. Other than that, it's good and comfortable in here. It's actually a nice place to be. Is there no aircon fitted? Wow, that really is penny pinching. It does make you feel like you didn't get the 911, doesn't it? Anyway, let's take this baby for a drive. So driving the Porsche Boxster 2.5 litre, 204 horsepower, mounted to a 5-speed manual gearbox. What's it like? Well, it's pretty solid, and I genuinely mean these seats they're grippy, they're sporty, but they're actually really comfortable. Arm room is pretty good, or elbow room I should say, and unlike the 911, the driving position is far more comfortable. You have your pedal box is far more over to the right. It's a lot more comfortable. For anyone that's ever driven a 911 like the 996 we drove last week, the pedal box is in the center of the car, and it's debatable how comfortable it would be in a long journey, is the way I'll put it, okay? Now, this is my first time driving a Porsche Boxster, I have to say, but I always love a mid-mounted engine. The engine note is right by your ear. It's comfortable to drive. There's a real, how would I put it? It's confidence inspiring in terms of the handling. It's very hard to break a mid-engine car free unless it's been badly set up or there's something wrong. Ooh. And the engine note is pretty nice as you rise up through the rev range. Now, down low in the revs, it's a pretty comfortable car. You can hear the engine note. It's nice. It's that usual throaty roar you get off a flat 6. And it sounds pretty good. And as you rise up through the reg, then it turns into a little bit of a howl. Other than that, the steering, I have to say, it's hydraulic power steering, rack and pinion. It's actually lovely. You can really feel the car and feel what it's doing. Unlike modern electronic systems, they're just not as good. You're just not as in tune with what's taking place on the road. Suspension, very compliant, I have to say, very, very compliant, even on the 17-inch rims which are on this car. It's nice and comfortable, it's nice and easy to drive. Like, I'm cruising along here, 45 miles per hour, in 5th gear, 1500 revs. It's a good, easy car to drive. You could live with this every single day, and that's kind of what Porsche had in mind when they designed this. They didn't want it to be as driver focused as say a 911. They didn't want you to be terrified driving it in the wet. They wanted you to be able to use this all day in all weathers and all years. And it's nice. It's aged beautifully. What is it, 24 years old? There's no rattles, there's no squeaks. Everything in the car works as it should. And that's brilliant. Now the owner tells me they purchased this as a project. So they got it about 12, 18 months ago, something like that. There was an issue with the synchromesh going into fourth, so they swapped out the gearbox. There was also, as I've already discussed, a tear in the roof. And I think that was pretty much it. There wasn't many other issues, really. I think the interior trim was a little bit worn, and they've kind of gotten on top of that. They said they'd no problem finding any of the parts. Everything was easy to get. Everything was cheap. There's a Porsche Owners Club in Ireland who are very, very active. For anyone who keeps an eye on them on Facebook, he's been in contact with them, and it turned out that one of the Porsche Club owners or members owned this car for 14 years. They then sold it. I believe a chef owned it after that, and then they picked it up off a local occasional car dealer, is how I describe it. Okay, they took it on as a project and they fixed it up, and they're having loads of fun with it. Now, I remember a time not too long ago when you could get these. Now I don't know what the owner paid for it, but you could get these for about $5,000 with needing a little bit of work. Let's just rev it for a second. So the owner tells me that between 4,000 and 5,000 RPM that there's nice sound off this engine. There is a nice sound off this engine between 4,000 and 5,000 RPM, and beyond that a little bit. Now, it's not my car, so I'm not going to rag it too much, but the owner has told me that this is okay. They're happy enough for me to do that. Other than that, what was I saying? Values. There was a time not too long ago where 4,000 to 5,000 euro would get you one of these. Might need a little bit of work, but be no problem picking it up. That boat has sailed. In fact, that boat sailed a long, long time ago. That's gone, all right? You'd be looking minimum for one of these now here in Ireland at 8,000 euro, and that will require work at that price. 10,000 euro to 12,000 euro will bag you a pretty respectable one. Now, that's not a lot of money. Given you're getting the Porsche badge, you're getting good big build quality, 2/3 of a Porsche 911, which you will not get for 12 to 15,000 euro. And I think it's got a really, like when I say it's a sweet drive, it really is. It doesn't matter that it's not the most powerful of the Boxsters. It doesn't matter that it's got the smallest of the engines. It doesn't matter that maybe some of the air conditioning, things like that, aren't fitted. Who cares? It's a convertible anyway. But it's really got a sweet driving experience. And as I say, parts are available. There's no problem getting parts. That's the great thing. I must say that is the great thing about any of the German cars. I know I like to laugh at some of them sometimes and talk about their build quality issues, especially in the 90s and mid 2000s. But credit where credit's due. Their parts backup is incredible, and it's really, really good. And it's a testament then through the owners clubs that everything can be gotten for these. Very supportive group of guys, and you know, it is worth acknowledging that, especially here in Ireland. The owners clubs really make a difference, especially keeping a car like this in the road when you have the challenge of tax. And that's where, I suppose, for now, the smaller engine kicks in as a benefit. It's cheap, the cheapest of them all to tax. And the other thing is, we're running into 23 now soon enough. This car is 5 years away from being 50 euros a year to tax. It's perfectly serviceable, it's perfectly usable. It could be run on a budget. Well, don't say it could be run on the budget, that's not quite what I mean, but it's certainly cheaper to run than a 911, we'll put it that way. So yeah, is it a smart move buying these? I think it really, really is. They need to be driven though. I wouldn't be buying it and stuffing it in a shed, because you're just going to come back to a load of bills you don't want. That would make the experience more expensive than if you just drove it in the first place. But yeah, definitely a really, really nice car. I'm really happy the owner let me take it out. I'm even more happy because we were debating taking it out this morning because the weather was looking like it was going to change, and just as I'm finishing up filming, it's starting to rain. So I'm kind of happy with that. We got the Porsche Boxster in the bag for you guys this week. Lads, contact me if you have cars you'd like to bring to Nina to have featured on the channel. If you bring the car to me, I'm happy to feature it. It's always great meeting the owners and having a chat. And of course, as I said at the start of this video, please subscribe. It lets me know that you want this Irish channel to continue. It's my indicator. It's the best way that I can tell. The other thing is, I know from looking at the stats that 90% of my regular viewers are not subscribed. So sort that one, folks, okay? Just subscribe. I don't get anything out of it, but it just lets me know that you're interested in what I'm doing and that you're happy with what I'm doing, and that's great, okay? So listen, folks, it's been great having you along for the drive. I'm delighted the owner gave me the opportunity. I've got 2 Porsches back to back. That was great because we could compare the 993, the last of the air-cooled, with its first of the water-cooled generation that were coming at the late 90s, and it's great to see that, okay? Not the first water-cooled Porsche, I must add, but the first of the more modern ones. So, yeah, we'll see you all again, folks. Bye-bye.